The ranger station at Pictured Rock's National Lakeshore sat squat and unassuming, a weathered box of cedar planks perched on a rise overlooking Lake Superior's restless expanse. On October 17, 2012, the air inside carried the mingled scents of pine resin, damp wool, and coffee that had sat too long in the pot, turning acrid as regret. Jeremy Sullivan, 5 feet 8 inches and wiry, leaned against the counter, flipping through a logbook with the idle precision of someone who'd rather be anywhere else. His uniform, forest green, patched at the elbows, hung loose on his frame, more suited to a librarian than the lumberjack Ken always ribbed him about not being. "You're a walking contradiction, Sullivan," Ken would say, smirking over a thermos that steamed like a dragon's breath. "All that book smarts, and you still tromp around out there like you're chasing ghosts." Jeremy would just shrug, a half-smile tugging at his lips. He liked the woods, liked their quiet, their indifference. They didn't care about your degree or your doubts, only your ability to keep moving. That morning, the radio squawked to life, shattering the stillness with a burst of static and a voice trembling on the edge of tears. It was Shannon's friend, a college kid from Munising whose name Jeremy didn't catch through the distortion. "She didn't come back," the voice said, 3 words that landed like stones in a still pond, rippling outward. Shannon, brown hair, freckles, a sophomore who talked about hiking Chapel Loop to sketch the cliffs, had gone out the previous afternoon and vanished into the park's 73,000 acres. Jeremy's stomach tightened, a familiar knot from dozens of calls like this, but something in the friend's tone, a quaver, a hitch, pricked at him. He grabbed the receiver, his voice steady despite the chill creeping up his spine. "This is Jeremy, Park Rescue. When'd you last see her?" The friend stammered through details. "Yesterday, 2 p.m., a blue jacket, a sketch pad," then dissolved into sobs. Jeremy scribbled notes, the pencils scratched loud in the quiet room, and promised help was coming. He didn't rush. Not yet. Pictured Rocks wasn't a place for haste. It rewarded the patient, the methodical. Most missing hikers turned up within hours, shivering under a pine or nursing a sprained ankle, their pride more bruised than their bodies. Shannon was probably fine, he told himself, slinging his pack over one shoulder. It held the essentials. A radio, a flashlight with a beam that could pierce fog, a handful of energy bars that tasted like cardboard dusted with despair, and a first aid kit he hoped he wouldn't need. He stepped outside, the wind off Superior slicing through his jacket, carrying the faint tang of algae and wet stone. The sky hung low, a gray curtain fringed with mist, and the pines swayed in a slow, mournful dance. He climbed into his truck, a battered Ford that groaned as it started, and drove the winding road to the Chapel Loop trailhead, 10 miles of gravel and shadow. Parking at the trailhead, he sat for a moment, engine ticking as it cooled, staring at the signpost half swallowed by ferns. Chapel Loop, 10.4 miles. The cliffs rose in the distance, their sandstone faces streaked with mineral stains, reds and yellows bleeding into the gray like wounds that wouldn't heal. He radioed dispatch. "This is Jeremy, heading out from Chapel Loop trailhead. Looking for Shannon, female, early 20s, blue jacket." The reply crackled back, a faceless voice wishing him luck. He stepped onto the path, boots sinking into the damp earth, and the forest closed around him like a fist. The silence was immediate, profound. No birds, no rustle of squirrels, just the wind's low moan threading through the trees. He called out, "Shannon, it's Jeremy from Park Rescue. You out there?" His voice bounced off the cliffs, returning fainter, as if the wilderness swallowed it whole. For the first 100 yards, he felt almost at ease. The trail was familiar, gravel giving way to packed dirt, roots twisting underfoot like veins, and the solitude was a comfort, a buffer against the world's noise. He'd always liked that about Pictured Rocks. Its vastness, its refusal to bend to human whims. But as he walked, the mist thickened, curling around his ankles, and the air grew heavy, pressing against his chest. He muttered to himself, a habit from years alone in the wild, "Well, Jeremy, if you find her quick, you might actually get breakfast before noon." The words felt thin, a thread of bravado fraying in the quiet. He didn't know then that breakfast would be the least of his worries, or that the forest was already watching, its gaze cold and unblinking. The Chapel Loop Trail stretched ahead, a ribbon of earth threading through a cathedral of pine and birch, its canopy a lattice that fractured the weak October light into slivers. Jeremy moved with a steady rhythm, boots crunching gravel, then thudding softly on dirt as the path dipped and rose. The mist clung to everything. Ferns glistened with it, their fronds curling inward like claws. Moss on the rocks shimmered, slick and dark. Even his jacket grew heavy, dampness seeping into the fabric. Lake Superior loomed to his left, invisible through the trees but audible. A low, ceaseless growl that vibrated in his bones. The cliffs flanked the trail on the right, their sheer faces towering 200 feet, pocked with caves and overhangs where shadows pooled like ink. He called out every few minutes, voice sharp against the stillness. "Shannon! Park Rescue! Can you hear me?" Each shout returned as an echo, distorted, as if the cliffs played it back through a warped lens. No answer came, no rustle of movement, no faint cry. Just the wind, threading through the pines with a sound like a sigh stretched too thin. He checked his watch. 8:15 a.m. 2 hours since he'd left the station, and the trail was empty. Not a day tripper, not a deer, not even the scat of a fox. That struck him as odd. Pictured Rocks wasn't a dead place. It thrummed with life, subtle but constant. Today it felt hollowed out, a shell abandoned by its tenants. He paused at a bend where the trail hugged the cliff's base, scanning the ground for signs. Nothing, no footprints, no broken twigs, no scraps of litter from careless hikers. His breath puffed in the chill, a fleeting cloud that dissolved into the mist. "Come on, Shannon," he muttered. "Give me something to work with." He'd seen this before, hikers veering off-trail, lured by a view or a shortcut, only to find themselves lost in the tangle of roots and ravines. Shannon was young, maybe reckless. She might have wandered too far, sketchpad in hand, chasing the perfect angle of the cliffs against the lake. He decided to widen his search, stepping off the main path onto a faint track, an old service route, overgrown with brambles and choked with fallen leaves. The shift was immediate. The forest closed tighter here, branches interlocking overhead, the light dimming to a bruised twilight. Thorns snagged his pants, and the ground softened, sucking at his boots with each step. He pushed deeper, flashlight flicking on to cut through the gloom, its beam catching the glint of spiderwebs strung between trees like tripwires. The air changed too, thicker, with a metallic edge he couldn't place, like rust or blood diluted by rain. His radio crackled, Ken's voice breaking through. "You got anything yet, Sullivan?" Jeremy adjusted the dial, wincing as static flared. "Not yet. Found a side path though, old service track. Gonna check it out." Ken's reply carried a trace of strain. "Good to know you're still breathing. Watch your step out there." Neither said it, but the unspoken hung between them. A flicker of doubt, a sense that the forest wasn't playing fair. He pressed on, the path twisting through a gully where water had carved a shallow trench, now dry and littered with pine needles. His mind wandered, stitching together what he knew. Shannon, a student, alone, no gear for an overnight stay. She should have left a trail, footprints in the mud, a dropped pencil, something. The absence gnawed at him, a puzzle with no edges. He'd rescued dozens over the years. Lost kids, drunk campers, even a guy who'd fallen into a crevasse chasing a selfie. They all left traces, breadcrumbs of their panic or folly. Shannon's silence felt deliberate, as if the wilderness had erased her. Then, ahead, the trees thinned into a clearing, a rough oval of trampled grass, no more than 20 feet across. He stopped, breath-catching. At its center lay a backpack, battered and torn along one seam, its contents spilling onto the earth. Beside it, a tent sagged, its poles snapped, fabric pooling like a deflated lung. Textbooks jutted from beneath the flaps, their pages curling in the damp. Biology, geology, the kind of heavy tomes a student might lug for a field sketch. He crouched, heart thudding, and flipped one open. Shannon stared back in black ink, scrawled on the inside cover with a flourish. "Ken," he said into the radio, voice tight. "I think I found her camp." Static hissed. Then Ken, "What's it look like?" Jeremy swallowed, eyes tracing the scene. Abandoned. Torn up. Something's not right. The clearing held its breath as Jeremy knelt beside the backpack. Its nylon skin ripped open like a wound. The air here was colder, sharper, as if the earth itself exhaled something ancient and sour. He ran his fingers along the tear. Jagged, not clean, the threads frayed as if clawed apart. Inside, a water bottle rolled free, half full, its cap missing. A granola bar wrapper crinkled under his touch, unopened. A sketchpad lay splayed, its pages smudged with charcoal sketches of the cliffs, their lines trembling as if drawn in haste. He flipped through it. Studies of rock faces, waves, a lone pine bent by wind, until a loose sheet fluttered out, landing face down in the dirt. He turned it over. A rough sketch of a figure, tall and blurred, standing among trees. No face, just a smudge where eyes should have been. His skin prickled. He set the pad aside, turning to the tent. It was a cheap model, the kind sold at big box stores, blue polyester, stakes bent or missing. The collapse wasn't natural. Something had crushed it, snapped the poles like twigs. He lifted a flap, peering inside. A sleeping bag, unzipped and empty. A flashlight with a cracked lens. A pair of socks balled up in a corner. No blood, no signs of a struggle within. Just abandonment, sudden and total. He straightened, scanning the clearing's edges. The pines stood sentinel, their needles a dark curtain, and the mist hung thicker here, blurring the line between tree and shadow. Then he saw the footprints. In the soft earth near the tent, they emerged small, narrow, the tread of hiking boots, erratic as if their owner had stumbled. Shannon's, he guessed, picturing her size from the friend's description. But beside them, deeper impressions cut into the mud. Larger boots, splayed wide, their edges worn but deliberate. And between them, drag marks, two parallel lines, shallow but unmistakable, snaking away from the camp into the woods. His stomach flipped, a slow churn that left him cold. He crouched, tracing the larger prints with a trembling finger. They were fresh, the soil still damp, no leaves fallen into them. Whoever had made them hadn't been gone long. "Ken," he said into the radio, forcing calm, "I've got footprints, 2 sets, and drag marks, leading off toward the cliffs." Ken's voice came back, clipped. "Drag marks? You sure?" Jeremy nodded, though Ken couldn't see. "Yeah, something pulled her, or her stuff, out of here." The line crackled. Then, "Backup's an hour out. Can you follow?" Jeremy hesitated, eyes on the tracks. "I'll try. Keep the line open." He stood, flashlight in one hand, the other brushing the radio clipped to his chest. The clearing felt smaller now, the trees leaning in, their branches like fingers brushing the mist. He followed the tracks, stepping carefully to avoid smudging them. They wound through the underbrush, skirting a fallen log slick with moss, dipping into a shallow ravine where the earth turned to clay. The drag marks deepened here, as if the weight had shifted, and he pictured Shannon, alive or not, being hauled through the dark. The image lodged in his throat, a lump he couldn't swallow. He'd seen accidents before. A climber's rope frayed on a jagged edge, a kayaker pinned under a log in Superior's currents. This wasn't that. This was intent, a story written in mud and silence. The forest grew denser, the light fading to a murky green as the canopy thickened. His flashlight beam danced across roots and rocks, catching glints of quartz in the soil, tiny eyes winking back. The metallic tang in the air sharpened, and he wondered if it was the lake, its iron-rich cliffs leaching into the wind, or something closer, something that had lingered in this clearing. He muttered to himself, a lifeline. "Okay, Jeremy, just follow the trail. Find her, get out." Simple, but the words rang hollow, drowned by the thud of his pulse. The tracks led Jeremy deeper, the forest folding around him like a shroud. The cliffs loomed closer now, their shadows stretching across the ground, and the lake's growl grew louder, a basso hum that rattled his teeth. He stumbled into a shallow ditch, branches snapping underfoot, and froze. There, beneath a tangle of limbs and leaves, lay a body. Shannon. Her face matched the photo. Brown hair matted with dirt, freckles stark against pallor, eyes half open to the sky, unseeing. She wore the blue jacket, torn at the shoulder, and her legs splayed at odd angles, as if dropped without care. No blood stained the earth, no gashes marred her skin. Just stillness, absolute and final. He knelt, breath shallow, and radioed Ken. "I found her. She's gone." His voice broke on the last word, a crack he couldn't hide. Ken's reply was immediate, tight. "Jesus, Jeremy. Backup's coming. You're not alone out there." But he was. The ditch cradled her like a grave, the forest a wall between him and the world. He forced himself to look closer, training kicking in. No wounds, no bruising, just the drag marks, ending where she lay. Her hands were empty, nails chipped but clean, as if she hadn't fought. He reached for her wrist, checking for a pulse he knew wouldn't be there. Cold, stiff, hours dead, maybe more. Then a flicker. A flash of white behind a stand of birch trees, their bark peeling in strips like flayed skin. He jerked upright, flashlight sweeping the gloom. "Hey, who's there?" His shout hung, unanswered, until a twig snapped, sharp as a bone breaking. He stepped toward the trees, beam trembling, and the branches parted. A man emerged, tall, broad, his frame filling the space like a storm cloud. Tangled hair brushed the collar of a faded camouflage shirt, and his boots, scuffed, mud-caked, matched the larger prints. His eyes locked on Jeremy's, unblinking, predatory, and one hand gripped a hunting knife, its blade dulled but curved like a talon. Jeremy's mouth went dry. "I'm Jeremy Sullivan, Park Rescue. Identify yourself." Silence. The man took a step, deliberate, knife glinting in the half-light. Jeremy backpedaled, radio crackling, Ken's voice, faint. "Jeremy? You there?" No time to answer. "Put the knife down," he said, hands raised, palms out. "We can talk." The man's lips twitched, a ghost of a sneer, and he lunged, blade slashing the air. The knife cut the mist, missing Jeremy's throat by inches. He twisted, sleeve tearing, and stumbled back, heart slamming against his ribs. The man moved fast, boots thudding, every motion honed. A hunter, not a drifter. Jeremy snatched a branch from the ground, thick and gnarled, and raised it like a club. "This is not the time to freeze," he hissed to himself, dodging another swing. The blade caught the branch with splintering, the shock jarring his arms. He swung back, aiming for the man's shoulder, but hit air as the attacker sidestepped, snarling words too garbled to parse. They circled, a clumsy dance in the ditch's confines. Jeremy's breath burned, the man's eyes never leaving his, dark, bottomless, like wells that swallowed light. The radio buzzed. "Ken." Frantic. "Jeremy, what's happening?" No chance to reply. The knife flashed again, and Jeremy ducked, rolling into the underbrush, thorns clawing his skin. He scrambled behind a tree, chest heaving, mind racing. Shannon's body, the drag marks, this man who moved like he owned the woods. Anger flared, hot and sudden, shoving fear aside. He gripped the branch tighter, waiting. The man charged, knife high. Jeremy sidestepped, letting him stumble, then swung hard across his back. The crack echoed, the man staggering, knife slipping from his grasp. Jeremy kicked it away, retreating to keep distance, branch still raised. The man whirled, fists clenched, but shouts, Ken's, others, rang through the trees. His eyes flickered, panic breaking through, and he bolted, vanishing into the birch and pine. Jeremy sank to his knees, adrenaline bleeding out, limbs trembling. Ken and two deputies burst in minutes later, guns drawn, faces pale. He pointed to Shannon, words tumbling. Him, knife. He ran. They fanned out, finding scraps of cloth near a deer path. Camouflage torn, but no man. Weeks blurred into a haze of searches and silence. Police found another body. An older man, missing days, dead in a ravine with no marks but the same stillness. Pictured rocks turned predator in the public's eye. Its trails cordoned, its beauty tainted. Jeremy worked through it, bruised but unbowed, scanning shadows for that face. Tangled hair, those eyes. The man slipped away, a ghost in the Upper Peninsula's wilds, leaving only whispers. Drifter, hermit, killer. Jeremy still walks the trails, pack heavier now. Ken's joke's a fragile shield. The forest watches, its secrets intact, and he wonders if it'll call him back to finish what began.